Well, hello YouTube, long time no see. Jeremy Four Sons Off-Road here. In the shop we have a Suzuki DA63T, and as you can see, it's already got some custom bumpers on the back there. We've got a custom bumper on the front. I'll show you that in a bit. Lift kit on there, and we're putting these on. So today I've decided to do a little bit more of an in-depth video of how these tracks actually go on this truck. This isn't going to be a drive video. This will definitely be more of a technical how-to, how those things go on, how they attach, what we actually have to do to the truck to make those things work. And we'll get a look at what this thing looks like. See a couple of wires hanging out there. We actually have a KFI 5,000 pound multi-mount winch going on there as well, so I'll be doing that once we get her up in the air too. But yeah, let's see how this goes. And you'll notice, well, I shouldn't say you'll notice, if you are familiar with the Suzuki DA63T, you will notice that there's quite a bit of front bumper missing already. So, you know, the truck comes with that lower front plastic. It's all a one-piece bumper all the way. This is all one piece. Pops off. You can trim it quite easily. The biggest problem with tracks is that you need front clearance. Back end is actually pretty simple. I mean, even a simple 2-inch lift kit on the back end, you'd probably be able to fit tracks no problem. It is the front end that you will have all your issues. So if you notice on the front, all of this is missing, that lower hang. If you also notice, so on this truck, there would have been a piece of steel coming down at about an angle here, going back across the frame. We've got our big heavy-duty bumpers put in place here. So that all gets trimmed out of the way, as well as, you know, the steel gets trimmed out of the way for the bumpers. I bet you anything, once we get this set up, we're probably going to have to actually trim this up even a little bit more just to get rid of some of this corner here. But front end clearance is your enemy with tracks. So we've already got a 4-inch lift kit on the front end there. On a DA63T Suzuki, a 4-inch or 3-inch, I mean a body lift, the higher the better. So a 4-inch lift, 3-inch lift is needed to fit tracks on the front end of these things. If you do not have enough lift on the truck, you're just forever going to be rubbing that track on the inside of the frame rail here. You're going to be rubbing that track on the back side of the fender well. And I mean, you go and spend $5,000 on a set of Camso tracks and just have it rubbing. So we get asked that question all the time is, hey, I've got a 2-inch lift kit on my truck, can I make these tracks work? Listen, they're going to bolt on, they're going to work terribly. You're going to have a lot of rub on the front end. You won't be able to steer without rubbing. Those tracks pivot up and down a lot. So even if the track sits and fits while you've got it on the ground, it can move up and steer. So I mean, you can see there's going to be a lot of issues with clearance there. That is one of the major reasons why Camso tracks specifically do not work really well with Daihatsu trucks. Any of the trucks with the, you know, wheels back under the seat here, the cab over style with all that big front overhang. I mean, you can see we've got our wheels all the way at the front of the cab. We've got all this bumper removed, and there still could be potentially some rubbing issues at full steer. So you can imagine those Subarus, Daihatsus, older style Suzukis where you have all that body hanging down here and the wheel way back there. That track is just going to be hitting that body, period. You literally end up shaving, you know, 6 inches of sheet metal off the bottom of your truck. At least here we just have to trim some plastic. It's pretty simple. But that is the main reason why you don't see us doing track kits on Daihatsu Hi-Jets. And, you know, we don't do a ton of them on the older style Suzukis. Yeah, let's check out the rest of the mounting. All right, so these are what we call our anti-rotation brackets. So this is a piece that does not come with the track kit from the factory. This is a piece that we've had custom fabricated to fit on these trucks. You see your lower control arm there? This piece basically bolts up underneath the lower control arm, and I'll show you once we get that installed. And the whole purpose of this piece is so that when the track is bolted to the truck, this is the front track here, and I'll show you. When that track is bolted to the truck, the hub bolts on right here and the wheel spins. If there was nothing to brace the track system to the truck, I mean, this whole thing could just literally spin like a wheel on the hub. So you've got, these are called your anti-rotation arms. These go from the track, and you've got this bolt that's right in center line there with the with that center hub, which will then bolt up to our anti-rotation brackets. And what that does is it holds that, you know, it keeps that track from having just complete free motion. There is some play in there, so it'll allow that track to pivot up and down, but it holds that track steady to the lower suspension arm of the truck, so that it's a controlled motion rather than just a big floppy track, you know, waving around in the front there. So that piece right there is definitely needed to make these fit. Now, unfortunately, like I say, Camso does not make a straight up custom fit kit to the newer style Suzuki carries. They did have one for the older style Suzukis. Their front kits will work, so if you've heard of Camoplast or Camso having a Suzuki carry kit, their front brackets will actually work with these newer style trucks. Their rear brackets will not, and I'll show you why. Alright, so we're just under the back end of this truck. I know it's a little dark, sorry about that, but you'll see this bracket hanging down here. So again, that is a bracket that we've had custom fabricated to fit these little mini trucks that welds on, and there's a removable lower bracket. You'll see the hole in the center there. Again, that hole is exactly the same thing on the rear track. On your rear Camso tracks, you notice that exact same arm. So you've got the lower anti-rotation arm there. That's going to bolt up to that rear bracket on our anti-rotation brackets on the truck side. Keep that rear track from just spinning like a wheel. Now, this is what you call an independent mount. So when we order these tracks from Camso, we actually order up a kit for an independent rear suspension side-by-side. Again, because Camso doesn't have a kit that'll fit right on this truck. The reason we do that is so that we can design just a really simple, clean mount. Just those little tabs, literally removable tabs. They don't hang down there. Of course, once you take the tracks off and put wheels back on, you get rid of those lower brackets. But a really nice, simple, clean mount. Those anti-rotation arms just bolt right in there. Really simple, nice setup. What Camso has done, and I'll be honest, we've done in the past as well. When we first started doing tracks for this truck, we did the same thing. We would order a rigid axle kit, which basically, instead of having just this little spring arm here, has a completely different setup that has a, it's really hard to explain, but if you've ever seen one, it's actually a almost like a sliding arm that comes off of the back, goes way out to the front of the track, and will actually come all the way out and mount up to your front leaf spring tower and mount. So the reason why Camso's Suzuki carry kit that they built for the older style trucks does not fit here is that their brackets that are designed to mount on here just don't fit with this new style tower. The other thing is, again, you have this big long brace bar that comes off the front of the track or the side of the track around and mounts way up here. They rattle like crazy. There's a lot of play in there. There has to be just to have that proper motion. They rattle and jiggle and rattle and rattle and rattle. We weren't really a big fan of that, so we thought there'd be a really easier and simpler way to do it, and this works really good. Just order the independent suspension kit for the Camso tracks, and then just a really simple mount like we've done on the back there. I'll get it all jacked up, and we will see how to bolt these things on. So you will need a pretty decent jack. The rear end's pretty simple. Get everything lifted right up, and I'll pull these wheels off, and we'll show you what's next. All right, beauty. Real easy. We've got that rear wheel just pulled off, and you just want to make sure that your drum surface is nice and clean, free of any big chunks or debris. And again, part of our kit that we had designed for these tracks, these Camso tracks to fit, is a completely custom built spacer. The wheel bolt pattern on a Suzuki Carry and most modern mini trucks is 4 on 100 millimeters. So what that means is you've got 4 studs with a 100 millimeter spacing diagonally center stud to center stud. So it's not 4 on 4, 4 on 4 inches. So when you go to the Imperial system, this is not exactly 4 inches center stud to center stud. It literally burns my bird. There's been so many guys selling 4 on 4 wheel spacers, 4 on 4 wheel kits, things like that. And I mean, you can put it on there and stretch your studs to fit, but it's a pain. So if you're doing anything with your mini truck, whether it be wheels, tracks, spacers, adapters, 4-on-100, the only way you can go, plain and simple. So the problem with 4-on-100, very common in the automotive industry, extremely uncommon in the UTV, off-road, side-by-side industry. So hence the completely custom spacers with the 4-on-100 bolt pattern that will fit right on there. And then we get them built with a 4-on-100 bolt pattern on the output side, which is very common in the ATV industry. Pretty much all the Japanese machines run 4-on-100. That means you can put your tracks on there. That also means you can get a set of aftermarket ATV wheels, bolt them to these same spacers. They work out really well. We run 1.5 inch wide on the spacers for these tracks. I've seen a lot of guys try to get away with 1 inch, and a lot of guys try to get away with 2 inch. 2 inch will work. 1 inch probably not recommended. You're going to run into rubbing issues potentially. And 2 inch you run with, end up getting actually too much offset, which makes it harder to link up to those brackets. You end up stretching your arms out to a really awkward. So 1.5 is perfect. And again, we've run these on a lot of track setups, so they work really well. So literally just using the stock bolts, we'll bolt that back into place and get our track lined up. All right, so we got her jacked up. We've got, what you're going to want to do, get your jack stands for sure, because you're actually going to want to make sure you remove the parking brake. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to line up the holes on the track with the holes on the hub adapter. But of course, you want to be careful, make sure your wheels are blocked and you've got your jack stands in place. And yeah, then it's a matter of just lining them up. You'll notice there's a whole pile of holes there on that track hub. This is Camso's, what they call their universal 4-bolt hub. So this is going to have 4-on-110, 4-on-115, and 4-on-137, which is basically covers Honda, Yamaha, Arctic Cat, Can-Am, you know, basically most of your main side-by-side brands. Polaris is one of the only ones, well, there's a few others, but Polaris runs a really wacky big bolt pattern on there all its own. But anyways, we're going to get this lined up and get her on there and torque her down. All right, so I've gone ahead and bolted the other side on just like the first, just so that I don't have to be working with jack stands and stuff like that anymore. Now you can start to see how these brackets are going to line up. Now, of course, that bolt's going to turn and the bushings are going to go in between. We're not going to set that up just yet, not until we get this thing sitting on all 4 tracks. And you're going to want it sitting nice and level, because this adjustment, basically, this tension adjustment needs to be made on the level so that you're not riding on too much tension on your track on flat ground, and then it's not pulling, you know, pulling one way or the other, up or down. So let's, I'm going to get the front end bolted on here. It's basically all the same as the back end. I'll show you those anti-rotation brackets once we get her to that point, but stay tuned. All right, so got the front wheel off here just so we can see where these anti-rotation brackets are going to go. So you'll notice right here on the lower control arm, we've got a kind of a brace bar that goes back to the frame there. Now, there's bolts that come through here, and they just have nuts on the bottom side there. Those work really well for supporting our lower control arm. So we're just going to pull those 2 nuts off underneath, install our lower control arm brace onto there, and the important thing with this, if you're building your own, is that the hole that the track brace is going to bolt into is dead center with the bottom of the ball joint. That's so that there's no binding when they're steering or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt this support up into place. Very important to use Loctite when you're putting these bolts back in and proper torque, because you don't want that coming loose on you. Could definitely spell some trouble. So I'll get that bolted up, and I'm going to put that track on there, and just going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Once I've got them all bolted up, I'll show you how these anti-rotation brackets work. Oh man, what a difference. I'm always amazed every time I get one of these trucks up on tracks, what a different machine it becomes. So we've got all 4 corners bolted up. I'm going to show you really quick. Again, we were talking about the 1.5 inch spacers.
on the hub spacers. We've seen guys try to get away with 1-inch spacers. Now, you know what? They'll probably bolt on, but if you notice right here between the edge of the track and the bottom of the strut, there's not a ton of room there. So you got 1-inch spacers on there. I mean, we're talking the width of my finger. That 1/2 inch is going to put that track kind of right there. You'll be really tight to the strut. So I don't like to see that, of course. So the 1.5 inch works perfect. The other thing is that extra 1/2 inch out is going to give you just that little bit of extra clearance to your frame when steering in. So should help eliminate some rub as well. So again, 1.5 inch spacers, they work great. Now again, I have not bolted up the anti-rotation brackets yet. I'm going to show you one of them. One thing I just wanted to point out, now that we've got the truck just off the jack onto the ground, you are going to want to have to do a wheel alignment. So again, you get your tracks bolted up, you're going to want to measure your toe in, toe out is your big issue. So with tracks, you want the toe in to be neutral, which means the measurement basically means both tracks are pointing straight forward. Sometimes with tires, you actually want them a little bit toed out, which will kind of dumb down the handling a little bit. With tracks, you want them straight ahead. Now, the way to measure that is from the center, typically the center of the front idler wheel, across to the center of the other idler wheel. That measurement, that distance should be the same as the measurement from the center of the rear to the center of the rear. Biggest mistake guys make is they'll measure from the edge of the track to the edge of the track, and the same thing on the back. That track actually can move back and forth quite a bit on the track frame itself. That is not a measurement. You'll find that really quickly. You'll measure that, you'll move the truck 2 seconds, and it's out 1.5 inches. Well, that's because, like I say, that track can move back and forth. Always have to measure it from a solid point. Center of the idler wheel works really well. And before you do your wheel alignment, once you drop this truck off the jacks, don't do your wheel alignment on the jacks, for one. You'll get it wrong for sure. And don't do it once you drop the truck just down off the jacks. I always like to drop the truck down. I'll back the truck out, do a little bit of a steer, try to get the front end loaded up a little bit, push on the brakes a few times as I'm pulling the truck back in ahead. Nice and neutral steering. I'll kind of back up and do that a few times. That makes sure that suspension settles out. This is not an equal length suspension. It's a simple McPherson strut suspension, which means that tire, the track, of course, that we have on there, is actually going to travel on an arc. It's not going to go straight up and down. It actually travels out on an arc and kind of swings up and down as that suspension goes up and down. So it can actually change, some of your angle adjustments and stuff like that. So you want to make sure you do it when the truck is neutral on the ground and has been kind of steadied back and forth, not just put down off the jacks, because you'll notice your measurements out a little bit after you drive the truck. So just a few hints, things that I've learned. So what I'm going to do is next thing we're going to do is just bolt up one of these anti-rotation brackets. Actually, we can bolt up all 4 corners because, again, the truck, all 4 tracks are on the ground. We're nice and level. So basically now this bolt here is going to end up going through that hole. And again, same thing on that side. We're going to just get all, the corners bolted up, and I'm going to show you why there's all this adjustment there. All right, so we've got our bolt from our anti-rotation arm bolted up to the bottom of our anti-rotation bracket that's on the truck. You see there's some bushings in there, as this is got a pivot, because again, this whole bracket's going to turn with the track as it steers, as well as when the track moves up and down. So that has to be nice and free. Now, what all this adjustment is about, and these springs and things like that, is how you set what's called the angle of attack on the track. So these tracks are designed to sit neutral at a certain position. Now, Camso does a few things to help you out with that. Number one, you've got a level bubble there. That level bubble is going to get you pretty close. Now, I always recommend, even before you try bolting, so like this side you see I haven't bolted on yet, get that bubble, like right now with that bubble being way out. Those holes aren't going to line up real nice. I'll be fighting with it, trying to adjust stuff. Get that thing sitting with the level, and it'll be a lot easier to get that bolt in. So
The nice part about this, you know, this has been a custom installation up until this point, custom adapters, custom spacers, custom brackets, custom. The nice part is everything from this point on, all your final adjustments, setting the angle of attack, that's all done right off of the Camso owner's manual that you're going to get with your track set. What the angle of attack is the angle at which that track sits. So that track is designed to ride at a certain height normally. If your angle of attack is too low, that front end of the track is going to be dipping down. That's going to do one major thing. You're going to notice that massively in the handling. The truck's going to be weaving and wandering all over the place because it's literally nose heavy on the tracks. Plus, you're going to be losing, again, that angle of attack. So if your angle of attack is set too high, where the track is arched way back, it'll be sitting way back on the back end of the track. Again, you're going to find funny handling. You know, it's just going to feel weird in the steering, as well as you're probably feel it a little bit in the ride as well, because it's going to be sitting back on that main idler instead of sitting on that center rocker. So you notice when it's sitting properly, this center set of bogies is actually mounted right through that center pin, and they can actually pivot. So that track will ride kind of really nicely on that center there. Makes it nice and smooth. These handle really beautifully, and they're actually a really nice performing track in that respect. So again, setting the angle of attack is simply done by getting it to a certain measurement. You'll go into the owner's manual, and there's a measurement to take from the bottom of the ground to the top of that rear idler wheel. And in order to adjust that, you're simply going to adjust the length of this arm. So the closer in it is, the lower the angle of attack. The further you push it out, the higher the angle of attack. So it's a really simple adjustment, but again, that just goes by the owner's manual. So I'm going to get this all bolted up. Same thing, the back end's very similar. You get it bolted into place, and it's a simple tension adjustment in the back. There is no angle of attack on the back end. It's a flat, plain track. It's just a matter of getting the tension proper on that rear spring. And again, that's all done with the owner's manual. So yeah, that's pretty much it as far as tracks goes. We're going to get that winch rigged up after that and show you the final product. All right, so finished product. Let us know what you think. Check out that winch. Got a KFI Assault AS50W multi-mount on there, so we can mount it, of course, to the receiver hitch on the front. It's got the multi-mount wiring so that you can clip it into the receiver hitch on the back. Looks like this is going to be an awesome package. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit there and you're not afraid to try some of this stuff yourself. As always, you can check out our website, foursonsoffroad.com.